Well, cool. Well, listen, Tim, I appreciate you taking the time to speak to us about this. I'm sure. Well, let me just ask you straight up. Like when you heard the news that an active NBA player and a former player slash coach and an active head coach were all part of this latest FBI indictment, what was your reaction?
Not shocked. I knew it was coming with the availability to do all this online gambling and knowing how much, you know, people like to gamble. I'm surprised that it took this long because I really don't think that the players and the coaches and everybody are being educated in the manner that they should so that they know the pitfalls of all this and the pitfalls of hanging out and being around the wrong people. So I'm surprised it actually took this long.
Just with respect to the indictment, well, there are two indictments. Have you had a chance to read them?
I haven't read them, but I see that there's a lot of people involved. And just from my perspective in my own case, I know what the FBI put me through and what it's like to sit in the hot seat. And I was just telling somebody earlier today, Phil Scala, who was the supervisory special agent in charge of the Gambino crime family squad, the minute I sat down to talk to him, he pointed his finger right in my face and he told me that I was sitting in the same seat as John Gotti, that he had got John Gotti. And if I thought that I was having any thoughts about lying to him, to get up and walk out of the room right then and there. So I know what the pressure's like being in a position and a situation like this. So these guys are basically, looking at a major amount of time in prison. And it's something that, when you sit down and cooperate and be honest with the FBI and tell them what you did, how you did it, and who you did it with, can possibly help you in a way to shave some prison time off your sentence. I think the majority of the people are going to do that, which is going to even make this thing a lot widespread than it already is.
Tim, you ultimately served 11 months of your sentence in federal prison, is that correct?
Actually, I served 13 months in federal prison, 15 days actually in solitary confinement. So something that I wouldn't wish on anybody. Federal prison system is extremely difficult. And, it's something that, without the help of my friends and family, I would have really never gotten through.
Do you think this is the ending of this stuff, or are a sign of what's to come?
I think it's a big sign of what's to come. I think at the college level, you're going to have a lot of these kids that aren't going to make it to the next level, professional sports-wise. You're going to have one of these guys associated with organized crime go to them and say, hey, listen, you're never making it to the NBA. You're never making it to the NFL. You're favored by 15 points tonight. Win by 10, 11, 12, 13 tonight. Here's 50 grand. Let's do this 4, 5, 6 times before you graduate so that you leave college with something. You leave college with a couple $100 grand so you can support your family. I think that's where the next scandal's coming from. It's already being done right now, I'm sure. It's just a matter of if somebody's going to get caught or not.
Tim, up until last week, you were the guy who was the central figure in the largest betting scandal to rock the NBA. Do you think you can still lay claim to that? Not that it's a competition you necessarily want to win, but would you say that the size and scope of this case that came down the pike last week supersedes what you went through? Give us some perspective.
No doubt about it. I was just discussing this with Warren Flagg, a former FBI agent, and John Lara, who was my attorney out of Tampa and New York. And we think it's just the tip of the iceberg. We think that this thing is going to be much bigger than it already is right now. In my situation, they were able to put a lid on it and paint me as one bad apple and the only guy that was involved when we all know that wasn't the case. And they're not going to be able to do that. It looks like the FBI agent is very adamant that he's going to turn over every stone. He's going to go after everybody that's involved. And we're already seeing that there's some other NFL players that were retired Hall of Famers that were at these poker games and involved. So, you're just starting to hear a little bit of what they're involved with, which means they're a lot deeper in and a lot more involved. So it's just a matter of time before the, whole truth comes out.
Well, you just alluded to it at the start. When the federal government comes at you with an extensive indictment and list of charges, as it did with all of these individuals last week, what does that mean for those people who are on the receiving end of those charges?
It means a lot of lonely, sad nights thinking about what your future is. And for me, I was the father of 4 daughters, so They had me scared to death. I didn't know how long I was going to be in prison for. I sat in a room up in New York while my attorney John Laurel and Warren Flagg met with FBI agents, and they left me in this room, and stacked to the ceiling were hundreds of boxes, all marked John Gotti trial, and on a whiteboard was crimes that may have pertained to me: gambling 5 to 10 years, money laundering 5 to 10 years. So, I was scared to death, and rightfully so. And, with that being said, it's a lot of lonely nights. It's a lot of unaware of what your future is, and you just really want to try and do the right thing because you want to do whatever it takes for, protect those 4 children that you have at home, knowing that their life is going to be turned upside down.
Do you know Chauncey Billups at all?
I know of him. Of course, I've refereed him many times. I've been in his presence many times, and I've seen him on the court now, not as an official coaching.
Are you surprised an active NBA head coach got caught up in something like this?
I'm not, because I know what a lot of these players, did, whether it was on planes, gambling, in warm-ups prior to, the tip-offs. I remember standing at half court one time in Washington, and Michael Jordan and Rip Hamilton betting tens of thousands of dollars, shooting three-point shots as I stood there as the clock wound down to start an NBA game. So I know that these guys are involved heavily in gambling. They have the itch for it, the excitement for it. So it doesn't really surprise me that it's spilled out onto the floor.
It's one thing to be involved in gambling. It's quite another to associate with members of organized crime who are, according to this indictment, running illegal poker games that are fixed. When you look at those allegations, and again, Chauncey Billups and the others will have their days in court to defend themselves, and I know he's already come out publicly to say he's innocent through his attorney. But when you look at those allegations associating with known figures of organized crime, taking part in a scheme to fix these poker games, at least in Billups' case, does that surprise you that those types of allegations would be levied at an active NBA head coach?
It does, whether they're an active NBA coach or not, to go to that length to, defraud people that, you're sitting at a poker table with and betting tens of thousands of dollars with. I mean, if that's exposed at that, time right there, that's, a situation where, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody pulled out a gun and shot somebody. So, that you're talking about millions of dollars people were defrauded out of and cheated out of. So, very, very, difficult to think that somebody would sit at that table like that and be involved in that. And, professional poker players, in my understanding, were hip to the whole scheme because a lot of them were being defrauded and beat.
Tim, just with respect to your experience, right? What did you learn from everything you went through? You're a lot older now, and I would think a little wiser. What did you learn from your experience?
No doubt. I mean, I learned a lot going through everything that I've been through. The most important thing, and I talk about this when I go to colleges and give speeches on the pitfalls of gambling, is, choices are so important. And, not only do they affect yourself, but they affect the people you love the most, and that's your family. And in my case, I had 4 daughters that, had their lives turned upside down, went from, a life of, comfort to something of unknown and non-understanding. And, like I said earlier, I had great family and friends that supported me, and I was able to rebuild my life. But a lot of people that are in that federal prison system are not able to do that. So it's extremely difficult, and it's important to make sure when you have an opportunity to go down the right road or that other road, that you choose that right road, because you're affecting a lot of people who you love the most.
What's your advice to Chauncey Billups, Terry Rozier, the NBA players, past and present, who are involved in this?
I think you have to just come clean. Sit down with the NBA, sit down with the FBI, admit that you made a mistake, admit that you made some poor choices, and try to do whatever you can do to right that wrong. I try to do that with the NBA and sit down with them. My attorney, John Laurel, and Warren Flagg called them, and they just wanted nothing to do with me. I was more than willing to sit down with them and let them know how I was able to do what I did, and where their mistakes were, and how they were running their business, and how I was able to, basically profit off of this. And, they didn't want anything to do with it, which I found to be a little bit disturbing. And maybe if they would have sat down with me and understood what I did and why and how I did it, that maybe it wouldn't have led to what's out there today.
A lot of people have asked the question, why? Why would Chauncey Billups, has made a lot of money as a player and continues to make a lot of money as a coach, why would he get involved in something like this? What do you think?
I got the same question, and it's a difficult answer, but I think it absolutely is a little bit of addiction. Obviously, he liked the thrill of gambling. He liked the thrill of hanging around these people associated with organized crime. And, in my case also, not only addiction, but stupidity. Right, crossing that line that you shouldn't have been near. You had a great life. You have one of the most exciting jobs that you can have, but yet for some reason that wasn't fulfilling and enough for you. So cross a line that you shouldn't have even been near.
Is there anything? Just you also touched on it. One last question for you, unless there's anything you'd like to add. Do you think the presence of online legal sports betting in most states, I believe it's now in 38 states, has exacerbated the problem? Or, like the industry would have us believe that because it's now legal and regulated in 38 states, we're catching things like this. But this wasn't exactly something that was going on FanDuel and DraftKings, right? These were illegal poker games. These were people who were providing information to bettors, and we don't know where those bettors were then wagering. So I guess, does online legal sports betting make things better, make it worse? What's your take?
I think that, online sports gambling and the ability to do it in every state, anywhere you want, it makes it worse. And I think we just, jump full speed ahead into this, and yet what are we doing to try to prevent things like this? What are we doing to try to prevent somebody losing their house or losing their paycheck on a Friday to the bookie? I think we have to educate, especially young adults, more, so that they know what the pitfalls of this can lead to, and it can lead to disaster. Just like drugs and alcohol, we educate so many people on this. Gambling is also an addiction, just like drugs and alcohol. So I think we have to somehow get the word out there. We have to educate these young adults and even these athletes at the professional level that, there's a line that you shouldn't have been near, and there's a situation where you can lose everything, including your freedom. And that's what's happening to me, and that's what's happening to these guys in this case.
You said we'll see more of this at the collegiate level. Do you think we'll also see more of it within the professional ranks?
I'd like to say no, but there's no doubt in my mind that this is widespread. It's not only in the NBA, it's in the NFL, it's in professional baseball, it's going on, and maybe it wasn't caught or discovered yet, but there's no doubt in my mind it's going on. I just think, the easier target is these college athletes that aren't making the big bucks, that aren't going to go to that next level and going to be susceptible to, leaving college with a couple $100,000 to support their family. So I think they're the easy targets now for these people associated with organized crime. But I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. I think you're really going to see a lot more names involved in this scandal with the NBA spread across all the sports leagues.
Tim, is there anything more you want to add?
No, I think you pretty much touched on it.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate it, man.